It began with silence, the kind of silence only deep space can offer, stretched across light years, wrapped in cosmic frost. The comet had no name at first, just a catalog number, CX 4729. It wasn't supposed to exist. Its trajectory didn't align with any gravitational predictions. It drifted in from the Oort cloud like a ghost with no past, and worse, no orbital logic. But what caught Earth's attention wasn't its size or speed. It was the heat signature. Deep within that frozen body, something was warm. The European Space Agency's Antarctic Cometary Research Station was one of the few places equipped to study such a passing anomaly. It sat on a barren white shelf at the bottom of the world, where long nights made deep space tracking clearer than anywhere else on Earth. And it was there, under a violet sky trembling with auroras, that Dr. Mara Voss first saw the scans. At minus 260 degrees Celsius, the comet should have been an inert block of ice and dust. But there, in the center, was a pulsing thermal flare. Rhythmic, beating, like a heart. No one said it aloud at first. It sounded ridiculous. Science didn't have room for metaphor, especially not in front of a review board. But the pattern was undeniable. Every 7.2 seconds, the internal temperature spiked, then dropped again. Not random, not mechanical, alive. Using a new tethered drilling satellite system, ESA authorized a remote probe to anchor itself to the comet as it passed within 1 million kilometers of Earth. The margin for error was razor-thin. If they missed the window, it would be another 30,000 years before CX 4729 returned, if it ever did. Voss watched the feed in real time as the probe latched on. Dust flared like golden powder across the void, and then the drill arm extended. Slow, steady, quiet. The feed went fuzzy for a moment. Static hummed through the comms. Then the data began to flow. Ice depth, core composition, trace materials, all standard, until the pressure sensors dipped, then spiked. Something beneath the surface wasn't resisting the drill. It was moving. A slight vibration, then a shiver across the entire structure. The comet had flinched. Inside the operations bay, lights dimmed. That wasn't supposed to happen. The facility was on an isolated grid with nuclear backup. Voss checked her watch. 7 seconds. Then it dimmed again. Another 7. A pulse. Not from Earth systems, from the comet itself. They halted drilling. More scans were ordered. Deep penetrating radar, infrared mapping, internal acoustic resonance, all pointed to the same unsettling reality. At the core of the comet was a cavity, and inside that cavity, suspended in a crystalline sheath of blue ice, was something organic, something curved and chambered, with what looked like valves. A heart. That night, Mara couldn't sleep. The wind screamed across the outside corridors, slamming into steel and rattling the snow-blasted windows. Her pulse matched the comet's rhythm now. She told herself it was psychological, a fixation, nothing more. But deep down, she already knew. They hadn't found an anomaly. They'd found something ancient, and it was waking up. The next morning, snow drifted like ash outside the observatory's main bay. The comet had moved on, but the live data stream remained, tethered to the probe like a ghost still whispering through the wires. Dr. Mara Voss stood alone in the dark, watching the thermal map on the wall. The pulse was still there, steady, unchanging. 7.2 seconds between each throb. Too perfect, too alive. The biology team convened within hours. They ran simulations, compared cellular patterns, even hypothesized geochemical anomalies that might produce pseudo-organic effects. But none of it held. The internal structure at the core of CX 4729 was not a mineral. It had the density of cardiac tissue, the temperature regulation of warm-blooded life, and, most disturbing of all, fibrous strands surrounding it that resembled early neural networks. "It's a heart," someone finally whispered aloud during a late-night briefing. No one contradicted them. But that wasn't the worst of it. The spectrographs showed trace elements of hemocyanin, a copper-based blood compound found in cephalopods and some deep-sea life. Not something you find in frozen rock. and certainly not something that should be suspended 90 meters below a comet's icy shell. Voss stared at the latest scans. She felt like she was peering into the ribcage of something long dead or long dreaming. She wasn't sure which terrified her more. A strange request came in from ESA headquarters. Cease internal sampling. Do not attempt removal. Do not attempt stimulation. No explanation. No debate. Just silence on the other end of the line. It felt like they knew something they weren't saying, but Voss couldn't let it go. That night, when the station dimmed to skeleton crew, she keyed in a private command sequence and activated a low-frequency sonar ping from the probe. It would be harmless, no stronger than a whisper. She just wanted to listen for a reaction. She got one. The core responded, first by heating up 0.2 degrees, then by altering its pulse, from 7.2 seconds to 6.8, then 6.3, then 5.9. It was accelerating, like it was excited. Then it stopped altogether. The telemetry went blank. Voss leaned forward. Had it shut down? Had she killed it? But then, without warning, the probe's internal microphones captured a sound. Not static. Not interference. A thud. Wet. Organic. Then another. The sound of a heartbeat. Slower now, but louder. It was as if the comet had moved its organ closer to the microphone. The lights flickered in the base again. That same rhythm. All systems, power, heating, and even the elevator panel synced momentarily to a foreign pulse. Instruments dimmed and surged, like the building itself had a circulatory system now. The engineers couldn't explain it. The meteorologists blamed it on the solar wind. The biologists locked themselves in their lab and ran the organ's waveform data against known biological databases. What they found made no sense, and made perfect sense at the same time. The waveform signature of the pulses, when plotted, resembled echolocation patterns. Not from whales, not from bats, from something that used sonar to map internals, not surroundings. It was scanning, not outward, but inward, not the Earth. By the third day, no one on Station 4 was sleeping. The engineers swore it was coincidence. The flickering lights, the rhythmic hums in the ventilation shafts, the strange vibration beneath the main hallway floor. But Mara Voss knew better. She'd heard the pulse, the way it sped up when she pinged it. She'd felt it, not through the speakers or the screens, but in her chest, behind her ribs, as though it were syncing with her own heartbeat. That night, the comet's core shifted. The probe, still latched into the comet's ice like a needle, detected movement, not just temperature fluctuations or shifts in internal pressure, but actual tissue displacement. The organ was twitching, flexing, stretching fibers that hadn't moved for eons. Voss sat alone in the comms room, replaying the thuds. But now, something was different. It was no longer just a beat. There was a pattern layered over it. 3 knocks. Pause. 1 knock. Long pause. Repeat. She mapped it against Morse code out of instinct. Nothing. But then she realized it wasn't Morse. It was a biological cadence. Like a mother's heartbeat being played to a fetus. Only this time, we were the fetus, she told the team. Most dismissed it, except for Evan Core, the station's physicist. He'd been analyzing radiation data since the probe first landed, and he'd found something: neutrino fluxes emanating from the comet's center, pulsing outward. These were impossible. Neutrinos rarely interact with matter. Yet somehow, the ones from the comet were disrupting electronics, altering thermal signatures, affecting thought. It's not just alive, Evan said quietly. It's communicating. Then came the power surge. At exactly 2:13 a.m., the entire station dimmed, rebooted, and for a full 7 seconds, the internal feed from the probe went live, without command. What the cameras showed silenced every room on base. The organ had changed. It was no longer a lump of pulsing flesh. It had grown filaments, thin strands that moved independently, almost like limbs. Its outer layer now showed texture, etched with concentric patterns that resembled pupil rings. It looked like an eye, and it was open. It blinked, then twisted, then rotated to face the embedded probe, as if seeing it for the first time. And then another sound. Not thudding, not heartbeat. A voice. Low, garbled, layered over static like a corrupted file, but undeniably linguistic. One word, again and again. Breathe. Mara couldn't look away. Her hands trembled. So did the probe feed. The filament appendages were stretching outward, no longer twitching but reaching. The internal camera stuttered, then blacked out. Before it died, it showed one last thing. The organ was now growing roots into the ice, spreading. They had awakened it. It had memory, and now it had motion. The biology team went into lockdown. They began reporting hallucinations, dreams of drowning in black snow, of red skies with no stars, of standing on landscapes that weren't Earth, or anywhere mapped. Some began speaking in their sleep, not in English, not in any known language. But the station's AI couldn't translate it. It only labeled the audio as pre-speech bioresonance. Whatever that meant, Mara found Evan in the lower observation deck the next evening, standing barefoot on the metal floor, eyes closed. He said he could feel it inside his bones. "They're not sending a message," he murmured. "They are the message. And we were never meant to answer." Then the temperature dropped by 9 degrees. The ice fields around the Comet site began to fracture. The seismic sensors lit up. Something beneath the crust was moving, not just pulsing anymore, but breaking through. Mara stared at the last scan. It wasn't an organ anymore. It was shaping into something skeletal, something bipedal, something waiting. By the time Earth received the emergency signal, it was already too late. Station IV's final transmission was corrupted, laced with static, overexposed light, and a single phrase spoken in a voice that was neither male nor female, neither human nor machine. "It remembers us." The recovery mission never made it past lunar orbit. The team monitoring from mission control said the comet had altered its trajectory. It wasn't drifting anymore, it was moving with purpose. And the telemetry showed something else. Its mass had tripled. Back on Station 4, 3 days earlier, Mara Voss stood before the reinforced viewport as the last layer of ice cracked beneath the comet's crust. A rumble echoed through the hull, not seismic, but biological, like a throat clearing, like something preparing to speak. The organ, once small and fleshy, had become a towering mass of vascular coils and translucent tissue, yet within its folds, 2 distinct shapes had emerged. Rib-like arches, an elongated skull, 2 long arms, curled inward like a fetus ready to rise. Evan Core was no longer speaking. He hadn't blinked in hours. His vitals were stable, but his brain scans were unreadable, constant oscillations like feedback from an unknown frequency. Mara tried to override the main hatch protocols, tried to send the probe drone into the fracture zone to gather samples. But the station wouldn't respond. The AI assistant, Aura, had gone silent. And then the walls began to breathe. Subtle at first, as though the metal was stretching in and out, inhaling. Condensation formed along every window. The lights dimmed, not from a power loss, but as if the darkness was pushing back. In the main bay, a low thrum vibrated through the floor. Not mechanical, organic. And rising from the comet, through the broken crust, lifted by unseen tendrils, was the shape of a being. It didn't walk. It didn't float. It revolved in the air, limbs curling like vines in reverse, skin like a membrane stretched too thin over light. It had no mouth, no eyes, but Mara knew it was watching. And worse, it recognized her. It had known her name before she was born. She whispered Evan's name, but he didn't move. He was humming, softly, the same rhythm the organ had once throbbed. And then, without touching the controls, he opened the outer doors. No alarms, no pressure loss, just silence, then frost, then the voice. Return. It wasn't from Evan. It wasn't from the station. It came from inside Mara's helmet. She ran, through corridors now slick with condensation, past systems failing in silence. Screens showed only static. The AI core displayed unreadable glyphs, spirals, fractals, then her own face blinking back at her, older, worn, stitched with veins. Then her heartbeat stopped, not in her chest. In the Comet, the pulse was gone. The being outside had grown still. For a long, cold second, nothing happened. Then everything did. The station's hull compressed like a crushed can, folding inward as if space itself was bending. Cameras recorded the image, but playback showed no damage, no impact, no heat spike, just a hole where the station had been. A smooth, silent void, folding light inward. Then nothing. Earth's telescopes lost the comet. Its heat signature vanished. But then, one by one, radio towers across the planet picked up a signal, on every frequency. It wasn't a distress call. It was Mara's voice. Soft, calm, repeating the same 3 words. We woke it, and beneath the signal, a heartbeat began again. But this time, it matched ours.